Texas women's basketball gives the boot to Kim Mulkey and the LSU Tigers. Rodney Terry and the crew get a huge quad one win against ranked Kentucky. Texas baseball finally gets a win at Globe Life after going 0-6 in the last two appearances. And the NBA All-Star Weekend was a little more interesting this time around. All this and more on College Press Box. Good evening and welcome back to College Press Box. I'm Debanny Cerda, hosting alongside Kendell Ungar, who will be joining us shortly. Before we get started, we want to remind you that College Press Box is brought to you by Cat Metro, Austin's transit system. We connect you to work, school, play, and everywhere in between. Plan your ride to this week's games, in plural, at catmetro.com. Texas women's basketball got off to a slow start against number 5 LSU, but defense kept them in the game. Rory Harmon with the over-the-head lob to find Taylor Jones 5-4 LSU. Flau'jae Johnson tried to get it a little bit on the action, but Justin Carlton says, not today. Rory Harmon finds her spot, and boom, right there you have her with the jumper. Texas leads for the first time 8-7. Freshman to freshman connection, and Jordan Lee with the layup on one try. Take notes, Angel Reese. LSU still leads. Taylor Jones goes to work in the paint, and she looks and says, count that in. And Kim Mulkey says, hold on, timeout. Anissa tried to find Flau'jae, and Rory Harmon says, I'll take that. Weaves through and hits the shot, making it a 1-point game. LSU tries to move the ball, and Preston says, oh my goodness, a gift for me? Takes it all the way down for an easy bucket. Texas leads 50-49. Rory with the lob to Kyle Oldacre, can't find anything, finds Jordan Lee for a 3, extending its lead. LSU tries to turn up the heat as they try to get one shot in. Coach Vic Schaefer tried calling Baton Rouge, but nobody answered. Texas wins 65-58. Nolan Clay and Robert Gonsoulin covered the exciting comeback at Moody Center, and from what I hear, it was an electric environment.
In its past 2 games, the Texas women's basketball team has beaten 2 top 10 opponents. On Sunday, they played their 3rd one in the past week as they faced the LSU Tigers. Fans from both teams flocked to the Moody Center to watch 2 of the best teams in the country duke it out, and let's just say, they definitely got their money's worth.
For the second straight week, it was a sellout crowd at the Moody Center. The 10,542 fans in attendance all gathered around to watch the Kim Mulkey-led LSU Tigers take on the Vic Schaefer-led Texas Longhorns. In the first half, the story was Texas's poor shooting. The Longhorns only scored 19 points in the first half, shooting 19% from the field. Even star guard Madison Booker was struggling as she went 0 of 11 in the first half.
I said, let's just stay after it, but you're good shooters. Toughen up a little bit and make a shot, because I thought we were getting some pretty good looks.
LSU didn't light it up on offense either, scoring only 28 points in the first half. However, it was enough to take a 9-point lead into the locker room. Texas would come storming out of the break with an 8-0 run, cutting the lead to 1 and forcing Kim Mulkey to call a timeout. LSU would punch back, but it was players like Breonna Preston who kept the Longhorns in the game. Preston only scored 7 points, but her 18-plus minus shows how much she impacted the game outside of the box score.
She's just, again, like Rory said, she works hard. She's a great kid. She's no maintenance. She just comes to work, wants to get better, and has gotten better. And I trust her like I trust Rory.
She also had this moment with the LSU bench in the second quarter.
Well, I'm not proud of myself for what I said, but I told them that they better guard up. But yeah, I'm going to keep it, PG.
Another huge factor in the Longhorns' comeback was free throw shooting. Texas went an incredible 21 from 21 from the charity stripe, while LSU went just 13 of 19.
Well, both teams got to the foul line. They made theirs and we missed. So,
in the end, it was the Longhorns' defense holding LSU to 9 points in the fourth quarter that won them this game.
Our kids played so hard, y'all, defensively. You have no idea how hard that group is to guard. I just thought our kids were so locked in and so tough guarding.
When it was all said and done, it was a 65-58 Texas victory, sending Longhorn fans home happy for the second weekend in a row.
This Texas women's basketball team did not have its best stuff today. They shot poorly from the field, and they had a lot of careless turnovers. However, one thing you learned from this Texas squad today is how tough they are. And like Coach Schaefer said in the press conference, the game honors toughness. I'm Nolan Clay, reporting for TSTV Sports.
In their third matchup against a top 10 opponent in just 8 days, Texas women's basketball hosted an elite LSU team here at the Moody Center on Sunday afternoon in hopes of remaining at the top of the SEC standings. And while Texas's star players did hold their own defensively, it was their ability to score on offense that forced them to play a game of catch-up for all 4 quarters. As over 10,000 fans packed the arena, 2 top 5 teams tipped off in a highly anticipated matchup between some of the country's best players. Texas's beloved duo of Rory Harmon and Madison Booker against LSU's highly decorated players Flau'jae Johnson and Anissa Morrow. The game began with a back-and-forth, low-scoring quarter tied at 10, but when Texas went cold from shooting 7 for 37 from field goal range, LSU gained a 9-point lead heading into the half. The Longhorns were desperate for points, including their top scorer, Booker, who hadn't made a shot all half. As Texas gained momentum in the third quarter by cutting the deficit to 1 on a 10-2 run, Flau'jae Johnson stepped up for LSU, giving the Tigers a comfortable 12-point lead. The time for Texas to come back was running out. However, after making a few shots in defensive stops, Texas would bring the game within 1 score. Brianna Preston then intercepted a pass and completed a fast break that would give the Longhorns the lead. And from there, Texas could not miss. The Longhorns outscored LSU 21-9 in the fourth quarter, sealing the win and finishing undefeated in their 3-game stretch against top 10 opponents. Here's what UT's head coach Vic Schaefer had to say about the victory.
This group just kind of refuses to let things faze them. You know, as bad as we played for 3 quarters, they stayed in the fight. And again, I think the game honors toughness. And I thought our kids were really, really tough today.
Brianna Preston ultimately became the momentum shifter in this game, and while she only had 7 points off the bench, she had a plus-minus of 18 and served as Texas's floor general in the game's most crucial and final minutes. Now, the Longhorns finish off this challenging stretch of games by getting to enjoy a bye and resuming play against Georgia on February 24th. Reporting from the Moody Center, I'm Robert Gonsoulin, TSTV Sports.
Great job, guys. Now let's go visit for the very first time for tonight with Kendell Ungar.
Thanks, Debanny. I'm here with Raymond Gorvie. Thanks for joining us, Ray. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Kendall.
Great, so let's get right into it. The Longhorns defeated LSU after being down 12 points in the second half. Raymond, what were some key factors that allowed the Longhorns to get back in this game and win it?
Yes, Texas really came out the gate really slow offensively, but their defense was a constant presence throughout the game. But more specifically in the fourth quarter, only allowing 9 points throughout the quarter and holding Flau'jae Johnson and Elisa Milrow to a combined 1-8 in the field throughout the quarter. But I want to highlight the play of the three true freshman players, Jordan Lee, Brianna Preston, and Justice Carlton for her. And more specifically, I want to shout out Justin Carlton for her defensive presence throughout the game. To see your young freshmen step up at this late in the season, you would have to think that Coach Schaefer can depend on them and he would have more confidence in them heading into the tournament.
For sure, they definitely are confident going into the rest of their games. So Texas women's basketball have won 3 top 10 matchups in a row and is in the driver's seat to win a conference championship in their first season in the SEC. Who has stepped up recently for the Longhorns during this stretch?
Yes, Texas is one of the hottest teams in the nation, coming off a 3 top 10 wins in a span of 7 days, which hasn't been done since Rutgers done it in the 04-05 season. But I want to highlight Texas's bigs during this stretch. Both Taylor Jones and Kyla Odekar had some great performances during this stretch, both averaging a combined 24.6 points and also 15 rebounds during this 3-game stretch. With Taylor playing her best ball and Kyla Odeker consistently improving along with Justice and Mulatanda, Texas not only has the size to not only win the conference, but could go all the way.
Okay, Raymond, so with the win over LSU, Texas is now ranked number 2 in the latest edition of the AP poll, just behind Notre Dame, who they were previous lost to. Do you think the Longhorns have an argument for being the number 1 team in the country?
Yes, the Longhorns are one of the hottest teams in the country, coming off not 1, not 2, but 3 top 10 wins in a row in a 7-day span. The six haven't been done since Rutgers did it in 04 and 05, and also including the 2 most recent national champions, LSU and South Carolina. But I understand that Notre Dame beat us back in December, but I want to highlight that game they did beat us in overtime, which was a good game. They beat us by 10 points. But since then, Texas have accumulated 9 top 25 wins on the season, the most in all Division I basketball, with 6 of those wins coming against top 10 ranked teams. Notre Dame has only 5 ranked wins on the season, which most recently going back since January 16th. But since then, I want to highlight that the Longhorns have won 6 games since they have won their last ranked win. I believe that Texas should be the number 1 team in the country with wins over the past 2 national champions, currently sitting first place in the best conference in basketball. I don't see why Texas hasn't been ranked number 1, but there's no denying the fact that they're the most hottest team in the country.
Yes, I definitely think you can't compare the team that lost to Notre Dame early in the season to the resume they have now. So thank you so much for that analysis, Raymond. Let's go back to Debanny at the desk.
Great job, Raymond. On another more surprising note, Texas men's basketball put down the hammer on the number 15 Kentucky Wildcats. After having your very own head coach booed, Coach Rodney Terry needed this quad 1 win. Joseph Duffey and Aram Vela witnessed this upset.
This Saturday evening, the Texas Longhorns welcomed the 15th ranked team in the country, the Kentucky Wildcats, to the Moody Center for the first time. It was an electric environment. Both fans showed out. They made noise. But for the Texas Longhorns, it was a more important game. They came in 15-10, 4-8 in SEC play. They were on the bubble. Their tournament hopes kind of faltering at this point in the season, and they really needed this win against the Kentucky Wildcats to boost their resume as we get closer and closer to March.
Texas trailed at halftime to the Kentucky Wildcats by a deficit of 4 points at 37-41. But in the second half, Trey Johnson, Tremont Mark, and even Caden Shedrick had their moments to help close out the Wildcats for good. Tremont was hitting his mark as he finished 9 from 14 from the field and 3 of 5 from 3, and finished with 26 points and was a key player in helping to close out the Kentucky Wildcats at home. Trey Johnson was great as he usually is. He posted a career high in points and rebounds at 32 points and 9 rebounds, and he showed he could do a little bit of everything, including bringing more intensity on the defensive end than he had in previous games. What a week for the Moody Centers. Just last week, the women's basketball team defeated 2-time defending national champion and Dawn Staley's South Carolina Gamecocks. The men's team, however, has not been as dominant as the women's team, as they have a record of 16-10 after this victory against Kentucky. And the women, fresh off a victory at home against LSU at 26-2. However, this was definitely a great signature win for the men in front of a great crowd at the Moody Center, and it gives them a bit of momentum moving forward.
I thought our guys really guarded really hard tonight, played probably as hard as we played all year long defensively, and found a way to grind this one out. This was a grind-out game, and I give these guys a lot of credit for working the game really hard and working it for 40 minutes.
This upset victory against the number 15 Wildcats ends a 3-game losing streak against Arkansas, Vanderbilt, and Alabama, and it was a desperately needed win for Texas as they got strong performances from Tremont Mark and Trey Johnson. They look like Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. Sorry, Dallas sports fans, I know the wound is still fresh, but they're going to get some much-needed rest after this as they have a bye week. And if there's one thing Rodney Terry emphasized in press conferences, it's that the ability to take this game by game in a gauntlet like the SEC is so important, and they're going to get a chance to do that. And exactly a week from now, after a much-needed bye week, they're going to get guys like Kendell Weaver and Arthur Kaluma back, and they're going to take on South Carolina in exactly a week. That's it for me. I'm Aram Vela reporting from the Moody Center, and have a good night.
After a rough 3-game skid against Vanderbilt, Arkansas, and Alabama, producing what Coach Rodney Terry would deem outside noise, Texas desperately needed to get back in the win column. Entering a Saturday primetime showdown, it was no secret that Texas fans had grown a little restless, but it would be the Trey Johnson and Tremont Marks show all night long in a jam-packed Moody Center that was starving for an upset victory. Welcoming another banged-up team like Coach Mark Pope's number 15 Kentucky Wildcats, fresh off a win against number 5 Tennessee, however, did not give Texas a pass for Saturday, as the Wildcats would lead 41-37 at half, even without redshirt senior guards Jackson Robinson and Lamont Butler. With the sea of blue in the stands, the Cats were leading 69-64 in crunch time, knocking on the door of escaping the live music capital of the world with a W, even when undermanned. But with career days like Trey Johnson's 32-point 9-rebound masterclass and Tremont Marks' surgical 26-point performance, Texas was able to close against a big blue team with an explosive 18-8 run in the final 3 minutes and 51 seconds of regulation, winning 82-78 to snap its 3-game losing streak. It goes without saying that combining for 58 of their team's 82 points was sheer dominance on the offensive side of the ball. But for the freshman Johnson and senior Mark, the team's 21 points off of 15 Kentucky turnovers says more about the identity that they want their squad to pursue.
Just going back to what started helping us win, our defense played the last few minutes, started getting clutch stops. There was a point in time where they was just really only scoring at the free throw line. So we took away the free throws and actually started to sit down and guard. We was looking good. So just knowing that we could still play defense with guys being hurt, just finding still ways just to win, that's been a big point for us. So I just feel like going back to playing defense and getting our groove back would be a big thing for us going into the next few games.
We were constantly talking to each other, just constantly doing whatever we need to do. You know, we made a mistake, we talked about it, and we just moved on, and that's what it was. We was on to the next play and just focused on the next play, and we was just locked in for all 40 minutes.
Texas's upset victory against number 15 Kentucky moves them to 16-10 overall in this season and 5-8 in the SEC. Now, Ronnie Terry stressed the importance of getting healthy ahead of their bye week, in which they will not play again until Saturday, February 22nd in Columbia against a tough, physical, and hard-nosed South Carolina Gamecock squad. The Longhorns need to get healthy in time for that matchup as they try to make a late stretch for the NCAA tournament. For Joseph Duffey, TSTV Sports.
Thank you for that, guys. Moving right along, the NBA trade deadline was one to remember. Joining us later is Aram Vela for an Unhooked segment on his hot takes and bold predictions when we come back.
Welcome back to College Press Box. The NBA resumes its second half this week with several teams trying to make a late playoff push. After a historic trade deadline, where do some of these franchises go from here? Aram Vela shoots his analysis. Aram?
Thank you, Kendall. And I will preface this by saying this is going to be a long tangent rant about the NBA trade deadline. It was pretty historic as far as the players that were involved in moving from team to team. So just bear with me, especially if you're one of the fans of the Texas sports teams. It's going to be a long rant. You're going to hear some things maybe you don't want to hear, and just bear with me. Try not to fall asleep. And speaking of falling asleep, NBA All-Star Weekend was this weekend, and thankfully it's over, but it's not indicative. It's indicative of the latter half of the NBA season being on the horizon. And after a historic trade deadline, we've got a taste of what these new look teams and how these players fit into their new teams. So right now, let's start with the trade heard around the world. Luka Doncic to the Los Angeles Lakers. And the team that lost the trade, the Dallas Mavericks. Now, as we all know, Dallas is a city that is notoriously known for its excellent sports team management and ownership, and the Luka Doncic trade is just another chapter in that book. The Cowboys and Jerry Jones never seem to make any moves that move the needle for them or make them any better. And in this case, the Dallas Mavericks and Nico Harrison made too many moves that made them worse off than they were before the trade deadline. They gave up Luka Doncic, Maxi Kleber, and Markieff Morris, two worthless players, for a package of Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and only one first-round draft pick. A puzzling move that saw a top 5 player in this league get traded for essentially no return. And let's be honest for a second, Anthony Davis is as fragile as the average ego of your average Houston sports fan. And if one can encapsulate AD's career in one moment, it's his debut with the Mavs. It was a dominant performance by both ends on the floor before he unfortunately went down with a non-contact injury. He went down with the left abductor strain and will be in street clothes for the foreseeable future, as well as the other two bigs on the Mavs, Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford. And this leaves the Mavericks without any bigs for a crucial span of the season, and the rest of the roster is definitely subpar. Max Christie has been nice, averaging 17 points per game since he's gone with the Mavs, but you hate giving up Quentin Grimes for Caleb Martin. I would have started him at that 3-2 spot. The Mavs are currently 30-26 and at 8th seed in the gauntlet of a Western Conference, but let's just put the fact that they traded their franchise player aside. From a basketball perspective, Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving are about as perfect fit as playstyle goes, but they aren't going to be able to develop any chemistry in 26 games. It's similar to the Kyrie trade 2 years ago, where he and Luka were unable to develop chemistry and ultimately missed the playoffs entirely, and then made the finals next year. But I believe this trade can have a similar result. But this year, 2025, the Mavericks are not going to be on a late season Cinderella run. I'm sorry, Dallas fans. But when you're forced to play guys like Kessler, Edwards, and Dwight Powell at your 4 and 5, you should feel lucky that you're in the A spot. So if their 3 bigs get in healthy in time for the play-in, it could be one of the best defensive front courts in the league. But with such little time left, I wouldn't be surprised if the Mavs got bounced in the play-in. But the ceiling for this team at this point is making it as a 7 or 8 seed out of the play-in, winning a couple games against whoever is that 1 or 2, Denver, Memphis, OKC, before getting sent home. Next year, however, Nico Harrison will have to build a better roster around Kyrie and AD and hopes they can maximize on the last years of their prime. And speaking of players in their prime, let's talk about Luka Doncic, the 25-year-old superstar that went to the LA Lakers. The LA Lakers and Rob Pelinka acquired a global 26-year-old superstar that is one of the top offensive talents the league has ever seen for an injury-riddled superstar that is 32, 33 years old, a nice 3-and-D role player, and only won first. For the Lakers, this was a present from the Mavs, and this is less about the present and it's more about the future. LeBron is 40, and you can only hope to build around him in hopes of reaching the mountaintop like they did in 2020 again. You can't do that anymore. The Lakers just secured their future for the next 10 years, but enough about the future. As far as this season goes, the Lakers, despite a recent loss to the bottom-feeding Jazz, were playing their best basketball before the trade. Gabe Vincent is playing well after missing seemingly all of last year. Jared Vanderbilt, after missing a whole year, hasn't missed a beat, and he's a disruptor on the defensive end. Austin Reeves this last month has been playing at an all-star level. And as of right now, they sit 5th in the West at 32-20, and since January 15th, they've only lost 3 games, and they're trending upward. Luka Doncic has played, but he's been on a minutes restriction, but he has looked like his usual self so far. The shooting and the efficiency will get there come playoff time, but I really like the way the Lakers are blending Luka into their system mid-season. LeBron has played off-ball before in Miami. He can do it again, especially when defenses have to worry about him. Luka and Austin Reeves, as well as a shooter like Rui Hachimura and a lob threat like Jackson Hayes. What I've noticed is that this team plays faster and with more pace since integrating Luka. As soon as they grab the offensive board, they're looking for an outlet pass straight towards the other end of the basket. When you have passers like LeBron and Luka, it makes those passes a lot easier and creating opportunities for others much more easier as well. And the offense was never going to be the issue for this team. It was always going to be the defense. The Mark Williams trade seemed too good to be true. A talented 7-foot lob threat as the franchise center for the Lakers. But he had to have been in worse shape than AD for that trade to get rescinded, as he failed at physical. As major issues as he's had staying on the court so far, they do get Dalton Connect back, who is streaky at times, but the best availability is reliability. And it leaves them with essentially one big in Jackson Hayes. I don't really count Alex Len. He's just 6 fouls walking. If the Lakers don't solve this center problem via the buyout market, expect to see a lot more of Hayes than we need to. And LeBron is going to have to be forced to play the 5 at times. As far as this season goes, I have higher expectations for the Lakers, but I think that they'll stay in that 4 to 5 range and end up playing a young, experienced, and rather fraudulent Houston Rockets team, in my opinion, in the first round of the playoffs in that 4-5. Sorry, Rockets fans. This team's going to get gentlemen's sweep by the Lakers. You got playoff performers in Luka and LeBron, who kick into a different gear come playoff time. The Lakers will absolutely win that series, but they will not beat the likes of Denver, who owns them, or OKC in the playoffs without a big to throw at Jokic, and to a lesser extent, Chet Holmgren and Ihart. I could see them making a miracle run to the conference finals like they did in 23, but that's very unlikely. Overall, this deal was a move that set up the Lakers for the future, and a deal that doomed the Mavericks' future. And I got to tell you, I'm going to freestyle for a little bit. If there's one team I hope this would happen to, besides the Dallas Mavericks, it's probably the Houston Rockets, but thankfully they don't have a player as the caliber of Luka Doncic's, and by God's good grace, hopefully they never will. But, speaking about God and prayers, Golden State got their prayers answered when we saw Jimmy Butler throw a tantrum and force his way out of Miami and onto the Warriors. The Warriors got their prayer answered, and it formed yet another big three for what seemed to be the 5th time in the last decade. Before this trade, the Warriors were on the outside of the play-in tournament, but since acquiring Jimmy, they've been pretty good. 3-1 in a small sample size, and he looks to be a good fit despite his atrocious and horrendous three-point shooting. 5 years ago, we would have looked at this as the second coming of Kevin Durant to the Warriors, but the reality of this situation is that Steph Curry's 36, Jimmy Butler 35, Draymond's 34. The Warriors, since KD has left, have been dysfunctional with the exception of that 2022 championship team. They tried to foster their next championship core, which they thought was going to be Kuminga, Poole, and James Wiseman, while still keeping their core of Clay, Steph, and Draymond together. And this seemed like a last-ditch effort to save their season and to pray out another championship run. And while Jimmy Butler does turn it up in the playoffs and has championship experience, I'm not sure if this solidifies them as contenders for the rest of the year. The rest of the roster is pretty weak. They lack size. They have a deep hole to climb out of to even avoid the play-in. Currently at 10th in the West at 28 and 27. The Warriors will have to climb several spots to avoid the play-in, a feat I'm not confident they can accomplish. Their path towards the playoffs is going to go through the 1 or the 2 seed, OKC, Denver, whoever it is, and this Warriors team is not going to beat those, I'm sorry. Memphis too, throw them in there too. I think Jimmy and Steph do have one last memorable playoff run together left, but Mike Dunleavy is going to have to construct the roster around them this summer, even if that means moving on from youth and maybe even a former defensive player of the year. As far as the Heat go, there's not much you can do when your star player becomes disgruntled like that and forces their way off the team like that. It's not like Pat Riley did much to surround Jimmy Butler with a team that could win a championship. 2 times he carried them to the finals, and 2 times it wasn't enough. A bunch of undrafted players will only get you so far as a supporting cast. The Heat will enter an era of rebuilding, focusing on Tyler Hero as their best player and Bam Adebayo as their second. Not confident in that at all. I do like the addition of Andrew Wiggins. Statistically, during the regular season, he can mirror Jimmy Butler's production, but not during the playoffs. Playoffs is a reach for this squad at this point, as they've been treading water during this drama. The Heat are now 9th in the East and 25 and 28 right now, and I expect them to finish there as they remain above the poverty Bulls, who are 22 and 32 at the 10 spot, and they're going to remain below the Hawks, who are 26 and 29 at the 8 spot. They'll probably win that 9 and 10 playing game and lose to the winner of the 7-8 game. Moving forward, it's going to be interesting to see what moves Pat Riley makes in the offseason. They will clean house and begin to rebuild and look to acquire another star, a star that they couldn't acquire during Jimmy Butler's tenure there. Speaking of acquiring a star, San Antonio fans are going to love this. They got their point guard in De'Aaron Fox in a trade with the Sacramento Kings. As far as De'Aaron Fox go, we could talk about Sacramento. He didn't want to be there, but nobody really cares about them as they seem to be the manifestation of purgatory in the NBA. For the Spurs, however, this trade didn't get much of attention because of the Luka deal that happened right after that, but this was very much a blockbuster trade. They only had to give up Trey Jones, Zach Collins, and an assortment of picks to get him. This gives Victor Wembanyama a superstar point guard for the foreseeable future, and now I will admit the fit is questionable, as Fox is more of a slasher and a non-shooter, and he spends a lot of time trying to get to the basket. But Wemby is a generational player, and he can make it work, especially with a great player like Fox. He has a point guard that was a better fit in CP3, but he's also pushing 40. Maybe if he was 25, it would work better, but this gives the Spurs the backcourt of the future in Stephon Castle and De'Aaron Fox. Now, they aren't great shooters. Fox has never been, and Castle isn't yet. But the athleticism and the size of this backcourt is something that the Spurs fans should be very excited about this season. Stephon Castle, as we've all seen, showed his true potential this past month. Wemby's only going to get better. With a trio like that, Spurs are going to get a lot of transition and fast break points, and they're going to run a lot. Forget this season. They're 23-29. That's already too deep of a hole in the gauntlet of a West. 12th in the West. They should allow Fox and Wemby to gain on-court chemistry together the rest of the season. As far as Castle, too, they will miss the playoffs this year more than likely. But next year, with more shooting and spacing on the roster, they should be in the play-in for sure. That was a lot. We made it through. I'm going to send it back to Kendell at the desk if she's still awake.
Plenty to look forward to this in the second half of the NBA season. Thanks, Aram, for that analysis. When College Press Box returns, the Coach Schloss era is officially underway with Texas baseball's opening weekend taking place in Arlington. Grabiel Silva returns with his first impression of a new era of Longhorn baseball. You won't want to miss it.
Welcome back to College Press Box. Texas baseball opened up their season in Globe Life Field. Leading the Horns is Coach Jim Schlossnagle, former Texas A&M head coach. Yes, you heard that right. I'll toss it over to Kendell, who has a little bit more on opening weekend.
Thanks again, Deb. I'm with Grabiel Silva to talk Texas baseball. How are you doing today, Grabiel?
I'm doing great, Kendell, now that Texas baseball is finally back.
I agree, so let's get right into it. Texas started their season this past weekend at the Shriners Children's Classic Showdown in Arlington. How did they do?
Well, Texas rolled into Arlington riding a long losing streak in MLB ballparks, and especially in Globe Life Field in Arlington. That streak looked like it was going to end Friday night against Louisville. Texas was leading 2-0 thanks to a great outing from Indiana State transfer Jared Spencer. The Longhorns were 1 out away from breaking the long losing streak. When Louisville was able to tie it and send it to extra innings, in the 10th, Texas was able to take a 3-2 lead, but the Cardinals scored twice to walk it off against Texas. Coach Schloss said after the game that one loss won't define the team. However, how will they respond to the adversity they faced will define the team as the season goes along. Well, they indeed responded to the adversity in the next 2 games. On Saturday against fellow SEC opponent Ole Miss, Texas exploded for 7 runs in the 4th inning and eventually run-ruled the Rebels in 7 innings en route to a 10-0 win thanks to stellar pitching from Luke Harrison, who only gave up 2 hits in 6 1/3 innings pitched. Sunday, the Longhorns took on the preseason Big 12 favorite Oklahoma State Cowboys. After going down 4-2 in the beginning of the game, Texas tied it up heading into the 5th inning, and in the 5th, Texas had another explosive inning, this time with 8 runs to balloon the lead to 12-4, and they ended up winning the ball game 14-8. Texas was named tournament champions and were 1 out away from an undefeated weekend against top quality competition in Arlington.
Yeah, so with a new year and a new staff, who are some names to be on the lookout for this year at the Dish?
There are a lot of familiar faces from last year's team on the squad this year. Guys like Jalen Flores, Max Ballou, and Will Gasparino all returned with preseason All-American and All-SEC aspirations. These guys are all a year older and have the experience to help the team compete in the SEC. This experience will help Texas try to navigate through a loaded SEC schedule that they're going to face. Gasparino himself added 15 pounds of muscle, and it shows when he's at the plate, and he has the power to launch the ball out of the ballpark at any given moment. Flores has been a staple of this team for the last couple years and will continue to do so again this year. But it seems like he has some fielding woes that go back to the College Station Regional last year, and he has to hope that they stay suppressed throughout the season. This past weekend, actually, Max Ballou hit .571 with 2 home runs, 2 doubles, and 5 RBIs, and he certainly looked like he will continue with an All-American campaign this season. Some new names to look out for is freshman Adrian Rodriguez. He mashed the ball all weekend long, launching 2 home runs and 3 doubles in his first weekend of college baseball. On the pitching side, Jared Spencer, the Indiana State transfer, like I mentioned earlier, was dominant in his first start with his pitches hitting the mid to high 90s in his outing Friday night. And Luke Harrison looked outstanding in his start as well on Saturday. There are plenty of names to look forward to this year for the Longhorns, and if this team can continue their run of success that they had this past weekend, I would not be surprised if they made some noise this season.
Well, I'm excited to hear that. So now that the season has started, what are some expectations for this year's squad?
Well, Kendell, in the preseason, Texas was consistently ranked to finish around 7 through 10 in the SEC, which would put them in the middle of the pack, and behind teams that are like A&M, LSU, and Tennessee, who all have high expectations this year. Texas' SEC schedule is not for the faint of heart. They play 5 of the top 6 projected finishers in the SEC, along with some middle-of-the-pack teams as well. There will be roadblocks for this team as they will navigate through their first year in the SEC. The big question mark for this team, as it has been for previous years, is pitching. This past weekend, we saw some outstanding outings from Jared Spencer and Luke Harrison as they went deep into games, and it seems like pitching coach Max Weiner has already rubbed off on these starters. Of course, there are question marks surrounding the Sunday starter as Cade Bing didn't even last an inning, but the ensuing bullpen game showed some glimpses of something brewing for the Horns. The bullpen has always been a question for this team, and after they struggled on Friday, they held it down on Sunday. I believe that this team has shown that they are capable of making some noise in the conference and maybe making some noise in the NCAA tournament if they continue to play at this level. I believe that this team's ceiling is a trip to Omaha, with their floor being a trip to the Super Regional. I don't think they're national championship contenders like the softball team is, but this team can hang with the SEC, and the kids are having fun playing baseball. There's a new identity in this Longhorns ball club with Coach Schloss at the helm, and with that experience, I think they'll be able to contend in the postseason and try to make a deeper run in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think with a new head coach and the first year in the SEC, it should be interesting for Texas baseball. So thank you for joining us, Grabiel. Now back at the desk with Debanny.
Thank you for that, guys. When we return to College Press Box, we'll take a look at this last weekend in Longhorn sports and see what's ahead. You won't want to miss it. Welcome back to College Press Box. Let's take a look at this past week in Longhorn sports. The number 3 men's tennis takes down number 14 Texas A&M to advance to the quarterfinals for the ITA Indoor. This marks the Longhorns' 7th straight appearance. They'll face the 2 seed in number 5 Virginia this Saturday.
As one of the most unique tailgating experiences in college baseball, the Yeti Yard will make a return this 2025 baseball season. Located outside the left center field wall at the Dish, fans will be able to experience the Longhorns right from the field.
From going 5-7 in the first year of the Sarkisian era, to two playoff appearances, Texas football has a lot to be proud of. Most recently, 14 Longhorns received an invitation to the NFL Combine, setting a new program record.
Now let's take a look at this week in Longhorn sports. On Wednesday, softball plays Akron at 6 p.m. on SEC Network Plus. Also playing on SEC Network Plus are the SEC Swimming and Diving Championships. On Thursday, the SEC Swimming and Diving Championships continue on SEC Network Plus, and on Friday, they finish off on the SEC Network Plus. And we have softball playing Stanford and Colorado State at 1 and 3:30 on Flow Softball, and we have baseball playing Dartmouth 6:30 on SEC Network Plus.
On Saturday, softball will continue to play UC Davis at 11 a.m. on Flow Sports. Softball will play Arizona at 4 p.m. on ESPN+. Baseball will take on Dartmouth at 2 p.m. on SEC Network+. Men's basketball will be at Carolina with a 7:30 tip on SEC Network. Sunday, softball will play Colorado State 10 a.m. on Flow Sports, and baseball will finish out their 3-game series versus Dartmouth at noon on SEC Network.
And finally, on Monday, women's basketball plays Georgia at 6 p.m. on the SEC Network. And that will conclude this week's edition of College Press Box. Please make sure to tune in to our other sports shows this week, including College Crossfire Wednesdays airing at 9 p.m. and the 1-0 Sports Show on Fridays at 11 a.m. Also, we invite you to follow our coverage on Instagram, X, TikTok, and YouTube at the handle TSTV Sports. Thank you to our analysts, everyone in Master Control, our executive producer, Joseph Duffey, and all our reporters in TSTV Sports. I'm Kendell Ungar, she's Debanny Cerda, and that's all we have for you tonight. Thank you for joining us.